Danke, serve.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Thank you very, very much for being with us tonight on this special occasion of a lecture about the future of our country. I think everybody knows Özdil Nami, but I will just say a few words. He was born in London in 1967, and he graduated from Boğaziçi University, having read economics and administrative sciences in 1988. He completed his MBA degree at the University of California at Berkeley in 1991. Before becoming a member of parliament, he joined business life, also lecturing at various universities on finance and economics, as well as serving as a political advisor to the leader of the Turkish Cypriot community. During this period, he was also active in NGOs, both as a member of the Assembly of the Turkish Cypriot Chamber of Commerce and as the chairman of Cyprus Turkish Business Association. In December 2004, he became a member of parliament. As a parliamentarian, he served as the elected representative of the Turkish Cypriot community at the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, as an observer member at the Socialist Group in the European Parliament, as well as the chairman of the Legal and Political Affairs Committee and the vice chairman of Public Reform and European Union Harmonization Committee. He also held ministerial positions under the Turkish Cypriot administration, first as the Minister of Foreign Affairs and then as the Minister in charge of Energy and Economy. Özdil Nami was the Chief Negotiator for the Turkish Cypriot side under the Good Offices mission of the UN Secretary General in 2008 to 2010 and in 2015 to 2017. I will never forget what a High Commissioner in Cyprus once told me. He said, "Thank your lucky stars for Özdil Nami." This can only be said about true Cypriots. Lütfen Özdil.
Good evening, Your Excellencies, dear friends. Let me start by thanking Rita for the kind invitation to be with you tonight. It's a real privilege. And thank you for coming and really sparing the time to listen to what I have to say. I was telling to my wife on the way here that, how many people will get out from their warm homes in this cold night to come and listen to me talking about the Cyprus issue, but I'm really touched by this. Of course, let it be far from me to lecture anyone about the Cyprus issue or the future of our homeland. I will, instead of lecturing, of course, I will simply try to share my experiences. I've been involved in this about 25 years now. What I experienced, what I took out of it, and what I believe should happen looking forward. I plan to keep it short so that we have time for questions and answers to keep it lively, and maybe that will allow me to go into the areas which interest you the most. We have, of course, Ambassador Andros Mavroyiannis also here, my good friend, and together with him, really, we have achieved a lot, and it's thanks to the great cooperation and friendship and trust that we built throughout the negotiation process that allowed us to achieve so many advanced convergences that took us to Crown Montana. Now, as Rita mentioned while reading my long CV, I started out being directly involved with the Cyprus issue as a political advisor to President Denktaş. Of course, Denktaş was not someone who seeked advice from anyone. Being a political advisor just meant me attending his meetings and holding minutes for him. But I worked 3 years under that capacity. After the first year, I believe, the way I was holding minutes was I was just saying, Denktaş repeated our well-known positions, and I started writing the jokes he was saying for posterity, for my own records. So he was repeating one constant message. He was saying that we need political equality, terrible things happened, we need a new system that makes sure those things do not happen ever again. And we were on board with this. We were trying to convince everyone that this is what we want. Cyprus, of course, should be a bizonal, bicommunal federation, but there must be political equality and there must be security for everyone involved. I continued to believe this was the position until 1998, when all of a sudden, of course, some events did happen. There's no need to go into detail of those. He declared a new position for the Turkish side. He said, well, I've tried this BBF model. It's not working. Therefore, we must have a recognition of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, at least for 1 day, separate sovereignty. And this will enable us to be on equal footing with the Greek Cypriot side. And this will enable us to achieve federation. That position, and he said, unless this is accepted, I am never going to talk with the Greek Cypriot leader ever again. Much like what our current leader, Tatar, is saying. I was there at that time, and we were all thinking, okay, it's easy enough to say this, but who will listen? And at that time, Turkish Foreign Minister Ismail Cem came, and we made an open declaration. We all even said that if European Union dared to accept Republic of Cyprus as a member, there would be no limit to our reaction to this. You know, very strong position. Of course, nothing happened. Nobody paid attention. Nobody listened. The world continued to operate in its own ways. And we soon realized that just by making these bold statements, we are not going to get anywhere. There is a real world, much bigger powers in operation. And then I remember Richard Holbrooke coming to the island, a very important, charismatic figure. All eyes were on Cyprus, and the attention of the US administration was on Cyprus. You really felt that something was about to happen, something big was about to happen. I remember standing at the gates of the presidential palace we have, waiting for Excellency Holbrooke to arrive, and we were expecting these big black limousines and I don't know, escorts and everything. Holbrooke, they arrived in a minivan. Very humble, you know. All the American delegation, one after the other, jumped out of the minivan, a little bit clumsily. Anyway, and then we entered. He was a very impressive man. I don't know how many of you had the chance to meet him, but very impressive person. And he told Denktaş, he said, President Denktaş. And we were writing down, Holbrooke called Denktaş president. Recognition by implication. And he said, I called you president not by mistake. And I noticed the note taker taking notes very eagerly. Of course, we don't recognize you as a president, but you are the president of your people. And he said to him, you achieved a lot. You achieved a lot for your people, but now the time has come to crown your achievement with a new partnership with the Greek Cypriot side based on equality. And a new plan will come. You will have your constituent state, you will have your territory, you will have the continuation of the guarantees, everything. So, and this needs to happen because EU is going to enlarge. and we need this enlargement before Russians do something funny, and we want Turkey to be a part of this big process to consolidate the West against Russia. This is something big, so you need to play your part and then take your place in history. And Denktash listened very patiently, and he said, well, in 1950, and then he started. and then, of course, Holbrooke said, okay, I understand what's going on here, but this is very unfortunate because things will happen and you will need to step aside. And that's exactly what happened later on. We had a new government in Turkey. EU enlargement process became extremely serious. Decisions were taken despite Turkish Cypriot side saying that this is against the Treaty of Establishment, this is against this legal thing. And I remember Commissioner Verheugen coming and saying to Denktash, after Denktash gave all these legalistic arguments, he said, but Mr. Denktash, we made a political decision, not a legal one. And that was it. That was the end of everything. Anyway, so later on, we found ourselves in Switzerland. Of course, we took a position not to talk to the Greek Cypriot side unless they recognize. So in Switzerland, we started the proximity talks. So we were staying in one building, Greek Cypriot delegation in another building. We wouldn't talk to each other, God forbid if we met across the street. So we would go to the UN building at a certain hour, and then the Greek Cypriot delegation would arrive, and the UN would tell us what each other thought. It was a ridiculous construct. Anyway, but it was a face-saving formula to reinitiate the talks. Of course, those didn't lead to anywhere. And then I resigned. I said, this is it. What I thought we were demanding is now on the table, but he's not taking it. And there is a bigger thing going on. And that bigger thing, looking back, I realized better, was there were bigger forces than us trying to keep Turkey out of the European Union. There was a semi-military rule. They liked it there. All the ideals that Europe stands for, rule of law, democracy, respect for human rights, everything, they were still not ready for this. And they were afraid if they had all this, maybe Turkey would be in trouble, its territorial integrity. They had fears. So they wanted to keep Turkey out of European Union. And the best tool to make sure that road was blocked was to keep the Cyprus issue unresolved. And they had a huge success in instigating these nationalistic feelings. And they would simply not be a part of such a process. But something unexpected happened, and Erdogan came to power. And when Erdogan came to power, he said Turkey's place is within Europe. Army should go back to the barracks, and Turkey should be a country run in accordance with the principles on which EU is founded. And everybody liked this. Even the business community, they loved it. And I was the chairman of the Businessmen Association. And they started taking us seriously. All these big billionaire businessmen who would never in their lives even consider talking to us, all of a sudden, we became their very good friends. Why? Because Cyprus issue needed to be resolved, and we need to convince Denktash to change his mind. Anyway, so we started collaborating, and Erdogan realized that he needed to overrule Denktash somehow. So Turkey's support to Denktash started to wane, get weaker and weaker. And Denktash realized this, and he sort of gave way to Talat to be a candidate without him running against Talat. And that's how Talat became the president. And Of course, before becoming president, in 2003 December, there were elections, and Talat asked me to become a member of parliament in support, showing the support of the business community to this pro-Annan plan movement. And I said to myself, well, if I say no and this becomes unsuccessful, I will never forgive myself. What's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, I become a candidate, either I lose, or if I win, we manage to go to referendum, and when we go to referendum, we will say yes, and surely the Greek Cypriot side will say yes. That's how naive I was at that time. And in 6 months, we will have new elections, and I will be out of politics, returning to business life, and everything will be back to normal. Little did I know I would be stuck in it for another 18 years. So this is how I sort of found myself gradually discussing all of these things. And then soon after, Talat appointed me as his negotiator, more than anything due to my English capabilities, but not because of my deep knowledge of the Cyprus issue. But at that time, Yakovo was my counterpart, and Christofias and Talat were very good friends. So there was again a big positive atmosphere. Everyone was expecting these two comrades to make it. We did make a lot of convergences. Many of the convergences that we sort of advanced with Andreas was created during the Talat Christofias times. The convergences were so good that Ban Ki-moon decided to come to the island. And during that time, we opened the Letra Street crossing. So again, the atmosphere was very positive. And Ban Ki-moon said, congratulations, you're almost there. So why don't we make a big public announcement declaring all the convergences to the people so that they know what you're doing and they get courage from this, and you push across the final phase. And Christofias said, no, I can't do it. And this was a big surprise, but it was also a learning experience. He said to us, although this is correct that we have advanced in many things, there is one chapter which we have not made advances, and that's security and guarantees. For the Greek Cypriot mind, he said, that's the big gain that we will have out of this. We will give you back your rights under power sharing and governance, and in return we will get back some territory and also something regarding security and guarantees. We need something new. And unless I hear more on those things, I cannot tell people I have given all these concessions, and still I am hoping to get concessions on the other things. So this dilemma we found ourselves in proved very detrimental, because soon after there were elections and Talat lost the elections. His opponent ran a campaign saying that we were making concessions and being unable to go to a solution, which proved that the Greek Cypriot side was never serious about a solution. So that was like the beginning of the time that I come to the realization that there was something fundamentally problematic in the way that we are approaching the Cyprus issue. Later on, Talat lost, Eroğlu came. Again, his initial position, 2 states. The efforts to find a federal solution has been exhausted. We have to talk about 2 states. I won't go into details, but then again, things happened, reality sank in, and then there was a need for Eroğlu to come back to the negotiating table, but he was unable to make the right maneuvers. I was the Minister of Foreign Affairs at that time, and I received a phone call from Ankara saying that, listen, we are in a difficulty, negotiations should resume, but we have to find the right way to do it. And we want you to facilitate this. I said, but it's the job of the president. My job is to promote TRNC. How are we going to do it? That they said, that's your problem. If there is a problem from the office of the president, we will make the necessary arrangements. You do what you can do and tell us about it. So I found this guy, Andreas Mavroyannis. He was a friend of a friend. And luck would have it, I was invited with my wife to a wedding ceremony in Limassol, either Limassol or Larnaca. Anyway, very nice summer wedding. And there, a gentleman said to me, you know, you really need to talk to Andreas Mavroyannis. He's a great guy, you can trust him, and together, if I put you in a room, you will find a way to push this forward. And that's exactly what happened. We arranged to meet at a friend's house over a cup of coffee and some cakes. Zivania, was it Zivania? Okay, thank you. Yes, but they okay, Zivania and maybe a little bit coffee. So Andreas said to me, and he will correct me if I'm wrong, he said to me, Özdil, you are someone who said yes to the Annan Plan. In the Annan Plan, there was single citizenship, single sovereignty, territorial integrity, single international. This is all we want, he said. All we want. We just want Erol'u to confirm. And these are basic Security Council resolutions. This is the very basis on which everything is happening. So without him confirming this, we can't do anything. And the leaders were unable to have even a cup of coffee at that time. I told him, this is true, but in the Annan Plan there were a few other things, like neither side can claim authority or jurisdiction over the other, and there will be internal citizenship, and a few other points. Would it be possible to put them all together so that it's a balanced thing? And he said, sure, of course, no problem. And then his English is better than mine, and we drafted something which later became the 11 February 2014 joint declaration between Erol'u and Anastasiadis, which was the document that triggered all the rest that led us until Crown Montana. And we did excellent work. What Andreas told me, Özdil, you know, we have to start from somewhere, and all right, where shall we start? I suggested the existing convergence papers, and he said to me, but your predecessor, during Erol'u time, the Turkish Cypriot, threw all those into the dustbin. So what are we going to do? I said, we are going to take those out of the dustbin. But it is true that we need some work, and we decided on a time limit. We said, I think like 2 or 3 weeks we gave ourselves to go over all the convergences. And we agreed a priori from the beginning that whatever was written there, he or I could propose an amendment. If both of us agreed, the new agreement would be the convergence. If we couldn't agree, whatever was agreed prior to us would remain as a convergence. So I think that was a very key agreement we reached that allowed us to start and finish within a reasonable time a very important work, which was done very successfully. We have done it. So we agreed, before going into the content of the papers, we agreed on a methodology. We agreed on a methodology which guaranteed a success within a limited time. This was done, and then we initiated proper talks and started achieving convergences. And I must say, maybe for the first time in the history of all negotiations, there was really a very different atmosphere. Soon after we started negotiating, we found ourselves as at least I felt it, and I suppose he felt it also, as a Cypriot team, you know. And we were not trying to score points against each other, but we were truly trying to find win-win solutions to existing problems for the benefit of all Cyprus, to create something that could actually work within the EU umbrella, of course, under the EU umbrella. So after 2 years or so, we exhausted what we could do on the island. We started having bottlenecks. We could see that we could make further advances, but the overall give and take was not happening. It was impossible to do it because the sixth element, security and guarantees, was still there. We were unable to talk about it because the guarantors were not with us. So we came to the conclusion that we have advanced as much as we could on the island. The time has matured to go in an international conference setting with the guarantor powers to engage in a final give and take. And that was why we went to Crown Montana. There were high-level convergences, but in every chapter, there were few still issues to be converged. And the idea was, once the Turkish side started opening its hand on the security and guarantees, the final give and take would happen, and then we would cross the finishing line. And we tried to do exactly that. In Mont Pelerin, we had meetings, and then in Geneva, Crown Montana, all with this idea. But we failed. Why we failed? We already gave a few lectures with Andreas why the failure happened, and was there a way to save it? Looking back, okay, it is true that for us it was a very traumatic event. Anastasiadis gave some signs of hesitation before, but I was thinking that, well, he has a legal background, he was a lawyer, he's driving a hard bargain, he's putting on an act, but in the end he will, shake hands with us. He will find a way to do it, but I was proven wrong. Instead of pushing it forward, he made some concrete demands. He said that we already opened our hand too much on the first 5 chapters, but on security and guarantees, we still have not heard the final say of Turkey. Are they going to accept a significant change in the guarantees? What will happen to the number of troops? Whereas the Turkish side was seeing this as showing our final hand without really knowing what he will give us in return regarding the first 5 issues. Like, is Anastasiadis really going to accept rotating presidency? Is he really going to accept equal treatment of Turkish nationals after Cyprus becomes, North also joins the European Union, so, what have you. And this led to a collapse. Okay, I do blame Anastasiadis for not staying there, for not demanding continuation of the conference as Akıncı did. If I was in his shoes, I would definitely demand this. But there was also, we have to recognize that there was also, beyond the personalities, beyond the fears of the leaders, there was something more systematically wrong with the negotiations. And looking back, when people ask me, Özdil, if you had the chance to do it all over again, what would you do differently? I say, I would, my mistake, looking back, if I have to do some self-criticism, as a negotiator, I should have insisted that once we engage in the final phase of the negotiations, we should have insisted on a time limit, we should have insisted on an arbitration, and we should have put some consequences on the side that leaves the negotiating table or says no at a referendum. The reason is, looking back and thinking what happened, we were unable to open our final cards, both sides. We were unable to, we were able to say our final words to the Secretary General, but because of lack of trust, we were not exposing these to the Greek Cypriot team, to Anastasiadis. Because we were afraid that if we told our final offer, he would just pocket this concession, leak it to the press, embarrass us within our own public opinion, and then continue being the president of Republic of Cyprus and enjoying life within the European Union. Whereas maybe Anastasiadis also got cold feet because he felt that he already opened his hand too much without getting something in return, and his elections were also coming, and he was focusing on how is he going to save his situation. So looking back, I think fundamentally the negotiation process design was flawed. And looking ahead, when Secretary General of United Nations has appointed new advisors and everything, and they would come to visit me as a retired negotiator and ask my views, this was my advice to them. Don't ask your advisors not to go into the content of negotiations. They did this huge mistake when Madam, the first one, Jane Hollut came. She directly went into the content of it. She went to Turkey to convince Turkey to say something more on security guarantees. She came to the Greek Cypriot side, pushing them to say more on rotating presidency. But if such a thing could have happened, it would have happened in Crans-Montana anyway. Without fixing the process, the negotiation process, she tried directly to convince the sides to engage in a new give and take within the content, which was a big mistake. Then Madame Holguin came, and her mandate was wrong, to find a common base between the two sides. I mean, that will take another 50 years, such a discussion. Common base is there. We've spent more than 50 years building something on that common base, you know? To reopen that for debate was a huge mistake. In my view, Secretary General should have said to the Turkish side, listen, all this talk about two-state is beyond Security Council resolutions. It is, my mandate does not even allow such a discussion. You need to hold discussions to establish a bizonal bicommunal federation. If not, then find yourself another host. Okay, but I cannot be a part of it. He should have been honest, okay? But to the Greek Cypriot side, to Greek Cypriot leader, he should have said, listen, don't ask me to facilitate just the resumption of talks. I have already reported that the period of open-ended negotiations are now behind us. And I have already said that the status quo is unacceptable. So come to me with another idea that is not a repetition of the open-ended negotiations, which implies a time limit, and then a definite way of working that will guarantee an end to the status quo. Until you come to me with a clever idea that delivers this, you know, don't waste my time. The world is engaged in so many other troubles, you know, I'm not going to be occupied with Cyprus issue anymore. If such a principled stand was taken by the Secretary General, and if the advisor was sent with such a mandate, I believe she would have had more success. And looking ahead, I believe that this is the only way to approach the Cyprus issue. Content is no longer the problem. The problem is crossing the final mile, like the President, the Secretary General had said in his report. He said the solution was on the table. What was lacking to cross the finishing line was political will. But the political will surfaces when you have a negotiation design that allows the parties to open their hand. Okay? So a new advisor should focus, and her mandate should be a new process design, negotiation process design. Not to find a new give and takes between the parties. We will do it. Once the process is properly designed, we as Cypriot sides, we will find the necessary compromises ourselves. We don't need others to tell us what we should agree. We can do it. But they have to facilitate a new negotiation process design. If this approach is adopted and supported by the international community, I believe the Turkish side will comply with this. And let me finish off with this. I still believe, despite the official line, official rhetoric, fundamentally, both Turkey and Turkish Cypriot side, we need a settlement. We need a settlement. Turkey is a huge country. Population-wise, economy-wise, it's very big. One of the dominant players in the region. They need to be anchored to West, and West needs Turkey to be anchored to with the operation, to uphold all the ideals that we believe in for the stability and prosperity of the region. And Cyprus issue is one of the main obstacles in that path. Already some maneuvers have started to be taken to move and to see what can be done on Cyprus. My fear is negotiations may resume for the sake of being seen as negotiating. And this is a big danger, I see. This will allow the politicians to be off the hook, okay? But Cypriots, people will continue to suffer. So we need a new approach that will take us to a solution. It can be done if there is a new orientation of the focus of all these talks and diplomatic work which is being done. So I promised to be short, but I apologize for going longer. I hope that helped, and the floor is yours for your questions and answers. Thank you for listening.
Who would like to start?
Maybe we could ask Andreas to add his views on what I have shared. Maybe he has. Okay.
Let's allow people to.
All right.
If there is something I
No, that's a very fascinating overview of this, and I suppose one observation that I would make is, and not at all in disagreement with your conclusion, it has always seemed strange to me as an outsider that matters of such fundamental importance to all Cypriots are in fact, including kind of constitutional arrangements and so on, are not drawn up in a more democratic process. That the leaders have such authority to make these very fundamental decisions. I mean, I understand exactly why leaders have to be the ones making decisions on things like security, international relations, because you cannot really have an external consultation. That is what they are there for. But on constitutional arrangements and things like that, it does seem somewhat unorthodox to me that this is conceded to the authority of the leaders. So I kind of have always wondered how the process ended up giving such control to what is inevitably two men.
Well, I mean, I think towards the end we were more inclusive than ever before. If you go back to the times of Denktash and Cipriano or what, Macarius, whatever. People were very detached. But during our work, of course, we had lots of committees working with us. And we asked the industry, for example, when it came to the property issue, economy, what have you, there were many people from the sectors who were involved. And we were constantly briefing them on what we were doing. Of course, protecting the confidentiality of what was being done. So I wouldn't say it was totally undemocratic in the sense that people were totally unaware of what we were doing. The basic parameters were also well known. And mind you, we also had the experience of the Annan Plan. And people knew that the outcome would look more or less something like this, improved version of it. So we never had a huge demand from the people to be more involved. This never happened. It's not like people were demanding and the leadership was resisting, They were trusting that, okay, we have good qualified people who were doing a fine job, and let's see what happens. That was the atmosphere.
From what I understood, the final hurdle was security for both communities. Did you discuss any scenarios about solving this problem?
As I said, I think the final hurdle was our inability to say our final word on all issues. So we didn't have rotating presidency agreed in writing, for example. Therefore, no. There was a version of it, and but playing with the right of veto and what have you. So we really were unable to, cross the finishing line by giving our full agreement on everything. On security and guarantees, what we accepted was the right of intervention can go, because Secretary General said the 1960 system of guarantees with the right of intervention is unsustainable. A new system of guarantees that involves the guarantor powers, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, should be agreed. And we said yes to this. This was paragraph number 6 of the Guterres outline. And we also said yes to the first 5. But the problem was we were unable to open our hand fully. They were demanding, okay, will there be a sunset to the security arrangement? How many troops does Turkey intend to keep on the island? Will there be a sunset on that? Those kind of things. We had answers, but we were unable to transmit it to the Greek Cypriot leader. There were ideas, so we didn't need the 1960s system to be repeated in today's world. There were ideas. We had a meeting in Montpellier, if I'm not mistaken, just on this issue, with the experts of the guarantor powers as well. Some ideas were generated, and we could see that there could be formulations acceptable to both sides. Okay, but as I said, unfortunately, the construct of negotiations did not allow us to open our hand fully. Now, mind you, I am saying this with also this reservation that despite the flawed design, I still believe if we had courageous leadership, if the two leaders together insisted on staying there for as long as it takes, we would have found a way still. Also, yeah.
Hello, thank you. Just a couple of observations, and maybe you can comment on them. You mentioned, the rotating presidency seems to be a stumbling block or a major issue. Have we ever considered, in the form of a looser federal arrangement, to have, like the Swiss model? I don't know who the president of Switzerland is. There's from what I understand, there's a presidential committee of 6 people or so, and they can rotate every 3 months. I mean, like the European presidency rotates, what the hell does it matter who's in the presidency of the European Commission every 6 months? It seems to be pretty immaterial to my way of thinking. So perhaps you could comment on that. The other thing is, as you mentioned, Erdogan's probably position over Europe has changed over the years. Initially, for his own opportunistic interest, perhaps he wanted to have a closer relationship with Europe, and then things have changed, and now for both sides they want to interact for their own reasons. But I don't think membership to the EU is really on the cards, and the Turks have probably distanced themselves from the EU. They have more power in the region, they have other relationships, and they probably don't want to be a member of the European Union, but of course they want benefits. So that's another issue to look at, perhaps, and you might wish to comment on. And you also mentioned that sort of it's Cyprus, from all the conversations I've had or listened to, Cyprus is not very high on the agenda of Turkey. It's already a sort of a foregone conclusion what has happened. The facts on the ground have been consolidated over 50 years, and I don't see Turkey too concerned about it. And now that Cyprus is very much in the Western and European camp in very clear ways nowadays, whereas unless the Cypriots themselves are really proactive and there's a groundswell and a movement for a solution, I don't see the international community particularly concerned about the current situation. It sounds probably counterintuitive because everybody says this situation cannot continue forever like this, and I agree, but where is the momentum for change? I don't see it.
Thank you, Garo. Well, regarding your first question, we said yes to the Annan Plan, which did not have a presidential model, but there was a presidential council. The idea of this presidency, instead of like the parliamentary system or the presidential council like the Swiss model, came from, at the time, from Christofias originally. He said to us that the Greek Cypriot voters are more accustomed to the presidential system, so it would be a plus in our efforts to sell the new agreement if they see something that they are familiar with. We said our principle is political equality. As long as we have political equality, we are not really that much concerned whether it's a presidential council or a rotating presidency or what have you. Regarding Turkey's EU aspiration, I mean, their official line just yesterday, von der Leyen was in Turkey, and Erdogan repeated, our strategic vision is to become a full member of the European Union. So officially, at least, that vision is still alive. But looking at today's picture, I agree with you that that seems to be a very far-fetched vision. But this is not a picture. We are watching a movie, and it has its ups and downs. Just maybe 10, 15 years ago, we had in the European Parliament, MEPs waving Turkish flags and saying yes to giving Turkey the title of a candidate to become a member of the European Union. Now, this seems like a very far-fetched idea. Who knows what will happen somewhere down the line? What is important is to keep that vision alive. And Cyprus is a big obstacle to do that. Even Turkey realizes that even if they don't eventually become a member of the European Union, and you may be right, they may also have changed their mind already, and they want to be in excellent relations with the European Union and United States and with their neighbors, actually, in order to exert their influence, benefit economically. We are talking about all these hydrocarbons and Turkey being an energy transit, which is important for them for financial reasons, but also for more strategic and security reasons. So I still believe they are keenly interested in solving the Cyprus problem. But from their perspective, I also understand they distancing themselves now from these efforts. And getting this new position because they tried. In 2004, Erdogan personally confronted Denktaş and supported a yes vote, failed, and didn't get anything in return. And he was criticized internally. And then up until 2017, again, he gave full support to Akıncı. I was there. In Crans-Montana, almost every night I was on the phone talking with him. He was saying, wake me up, it doesn't matter what time, and just fill me in on the progress you are making. I want this to be done. But he was saying, but be careful, you may not have a serious counterpart. He was also warning us, okay? And we failed. And he paid the political price, by the way. In order to decrease that political price, the day after the failure, he put the full reverse gear and stepped on the gas and, completely 180 degrees turn in the opposite direction. But now I believe, once again, they are trying to reorient themselves and also a more realistic, there is this search for a more realistic position regarding Cyprus. But if I have learned anything about them, they will not be the first to say this anymore because of their past experiences. They will expect someone, whether this will be United States, United Nations, or I don't know who, to go to them and tell them, okay, this is your current position, tell us what will it take to get you back on the right track. And they will, lots of behind closed doors diplomacy will have to take place. But I agree with you, there is a lot of apathy in the international world, and we are not on the top list. And there, we as Cypriots, we have to raise our voices much more and put more pressure on the leaders, I suppose.
I just wanted to ask Özdil, the three prime ministers were supposed to come to Crans-Montana,
Yes.
and they never did. Do you think if they had been able to come, and why weren't they able to come, would it have helped?
Yes. They would come only if we called them to come. If we asked them, if we told them that, okay, we can see that we are going to make it, but we need you to come to make the final decision, especially on the troops. What will be the number? Will there be a sunset clause? We couldn't go into the details of these because, as you can understand, these are the matters of Treaty of Alliance. And Turkish signature is there. So we could not take decisions on their behalf. And Mevlüt Çavuşoğlu said, these are the decisions left for the president, so he should come. But we were unable to tell them, come, we are there, and we are, we need you to make the final. If they came, at least we were ready. We were ready to do our best to put on a very convincing new proposal. Of course, it would not be zero troops and zero guarantees. I can never say, I never heard Turkey or anyone in the Turkish side even contemplating going to zero troops and zero guarantees. The maximum we were contemplating was adopting something new. We didn't know what will be this new model, but we were ready to talk and negotiate, and we were also ready to review. But we were not ready to give a commitment from day one for the abolition of troops and guarantees. But I believe if the leaders were to come, something that majority of Cypriots would be comfortable in saying yes to. Because let's not forget, we would be reunited and we would be within the European Union and so on and so forth. Yes.
Good evening, Özdil. You have very eloquently described everything that has happened so far in a very logical and, with my knowledge, very realistic way. How would you comment on the proposition that in the future, if this ever happens again, and I believe it will, I'm optimistic, that you're locked in a room with someone door without any toilet facilities for us to come to finish this off, and you won't be able to come out of this unless you have an agreement.
Right. Well, first of all, I'm glad that I have now retired myself. So in case such a thing happens, I won't be a part of it. But I don't think, it will have to be that Spartan. If before engaging in negotiations on the final remaining issues, we manage to agree on this new process design that says, okay, we are going to allow ourselves a few months. We will give it our best shot to agree. But if we don't, then there will be kind of an arbitration, a deadlock resolving mechanism. We will finish it, and then we will go to people, sort of like an autopilot process. Then it will be done. It will be done. Until that part, I don't think it's very problematic, even for the current Greek Cypriot leader. But there is this final element, which I insist must happen. The party that says no must be subjected to a serious consequence. This is not to punish anyone, by the way. This is to give enough motivation to people to say yes to federation. Because we know fundamentally people are afraid of change, especially if the status quo is not too bad for them, if life is okay. And they are prone to maintain the status quo. But if there is no price attached to that, the likelihood is they will again opt for the status quo. And therefore, this final element should also be inserted there for both sides. And then you push the button, and I believe once we do that, we will have a successful outcome. Yes?
As a Cypriot that has been living outside of Cyprus for so many years and bringing in my Latin American experience, it gave me a different perspective to understand what was going on with the Cyprus problem. So this as an introduction, understanding that we are living in very complex societies, very globalized, with capital fighting among itself of who is going to be the owner of different resources around the world, and how a new mutation of capitalism is going to occur. We are in the middle of a transition. My question is that how do you believe that in a very linear and direct way that you have been negotiating all these years, with you in closed rooms, one in one hotel, another hotel, and with mediators, etc., that it's going to be so easy with so much distrust, misinformation, disinformation, and societies that do not believe in their political leaders, in the political parties, and that we have the rise of new kinds of leadership that have no substantial ideological and political background, that societies are going to accept a new possibility of a solution just because we change the methodology and the framework of the discussion. Because I also agree with a lack of real democracy. I mean, today, at least in the business world, in order to achieve negotiation, we need to have a very, very agile and very practical communication. But we need to involve all of our stakeholders. So if we leave the society outside as a stakeholder, how are we going to achieve that solution made in papers and legally is going to be implemented by the society? Because the final issue is that Cypriots to live together. Thank you. It's a complex issue, so we have to... Thank you.
It is complex, and I never said it's going to be easy. I decided not to be a politician anymore, and not to be involved with within the first track anymore, because I also believe the time has come to be with the people more, more engaged on a day-to-day basis. I am determined to play my part and do my part on this. This is why I am here. This is why Andreas and myself, we were in Home for Cooperation the other day, giving YouTubers interviews, so on and so forth. So I will do my part, but everybody has to do. This has to be a collective effort, and I thank all of you for being even present here. Is a show of a political will, that you are determined to do something. After tonight, you will start evaluating these, what you have heard, discussing with others people, and this will help us to get rid of this huge apathy that exists on both sides right now among people. And hopefully, when the environment is more conducive, all this work will bear fruit. But it is true that no matter how hard we try, there are also some environmental factors which also need to, we say stars must also be aligned. I believe the world is such that sooner or later stars do get aligned. Let's make sure that we are ready to do whatever it takes when they are aligned and not be taken off guard.
Özdil, I would like to thank you for tonight's presentation, but also for your contribution in the last 25 years.
Thank you.
I would like to ask you, you are proposing, and I happen to agree with you, that we need a process that will have a deadline,
Yes.
and will also have consequences for the side that's going to move away. We have two leaders right now. All of us here have an opinion about them. How optimistic are you with these two specific leaders? We can move forward in a process like the one you described.
Right. I am optimistic about my leader because he's not a Denktash. He's not a Denktash. He is someone who is prone to show extreme flexibility and ability to change course. So if the environment is becoming such that he needs to change course, he will do it, definitely. Denktash, for example, he wouldn't, and he didn't. And he excused himself and moved on. This one is not like this. The Greek Cypriot leader, you will be a better judge of that than I am. So I don't want to comment on that one more. But what I saw in my experience was when bigger forces are in place and things are happening in Cyprus as well, these leaders can't stop this. They can postpone it, they can delay the match, they can make a foul here and stop the game, but in the end, the game is resumed and we do go somewhere. So I'm hoping this will. Yes, yes. I mean, right now, I see such a thing being developed. What happened in Syria should not be underestimated. Turkey feels more powerful now, more emboldened. But they also know that it is an opportunity that they should not miss, or realigning themselves with the West and the United States in terms which are, of course, they like. But once they are engaged in trying to do this, again, Cyprus issue will be there. And they will have to tackle it. And there is only way to tackle it. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe not immediately in the coming months, maybe this will be happening after our presidential elections, but this is going to happen, in my view.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You were being very economical with your position on the new process design, but in the questions and answers, you touched upon it. I'm not convinced that we won't spend a few decades discussing some political leaders have their own agendas. They utilize the process in order to serve those things. So why not take it out of the leaders' hands in the final stage and give it to the people through their representatives? In other instances, when states have been radically transformed, there has been a well-trusted process used, a constituent assembly or convention. Why not have such a convention assembly composed of equal numbers of Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, and get the leaders to take it to the most advanced stage that they have already agreed, and give that framework to the Constituent Assembly, and whatever the people through their representatives decide. That will have a number of benefits on the way there as well. And do publish the convergences at their most advanced stage. That will get the people encouraged and mobilize them and get the involvement that you say we have not seen up to now.
I'm glad you mentioned this last point, because whenever I'm invited to express my views, I mention this, that I fully support declaring all the convergences and making them public. This would be an excellent way of getting public engagement and interest. And Erat also knows this. We are working together in a bicommunal NGO. And we have also made a joint declaration. And people thought that this was next to impossible for us to agree, but we did. And Andreas also had his contributions in the making of that joint statement. This idea of, I'm all for more people's involvement. However, there are academicians who are working on this, and I fully support their work as well. I don't know how the dynamics exactly would work, but even if we put in place such a thing, let's say the leaders have said, okay, we are delegating our power to this citizens' assembly, and whatever comes out of it can be put to referendum. Still, the dynamics I have mentioned would have to be in action. So this citizen assembly would also have to operate under the conditions of a time limit, at the end of which there would have to be an arbitration, and when we go to a referendum, there would have to be consequences on the side that says no. Those questions would still need to be answered. So whether the process is led by a citizens' assembly or by the leaders or whatnot, for me is secondary. The important is the fundamental question of how are we going to sail through this final phase.
Okay. One final question.
Yes, yes.
You answer in one word. Optimistic or pessimistic about the future?
Well, Churchill has said there is no sense in being a pessimist. So optimist, always an optimist.
Over a glass of wine. Thank you very much for coming.